welcome to Dr. Z PhD interviews. Today I have a very special guest, special because I know this person so incredibly well. This is a really good friend of mine. So today the person that I'm introducing to all of you is Aloe Miranda. Okay, say your last name again, because now it's keeping my mind. I don't want to butcher it. Barrios. I don't think I ever said your last name ever in the course of our friendship. So I'm going to divert saying it from now on. But Aloe is an incredible woman. She is a marathoner. She's also what I call a sex siren. And we'll find out today exactly why she's such a sex siren, as well as a trans advocate. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here because I've seen all your stuff and I don't always comment, but you do amazing stuff. You've done some great stuff and you've had great interviewers on here, interviewees, sorry.
Of course you're going to say this, you're my friend, so we're going to stroke each other's egos. That's normal.
No. I mean, I'm being honest. I'm being truly, you know me, I'm cutthroat, I'm straight.
Right. That's one thing that I love about Aloe is you're right. You are so cutthroat. That's why I wanted to have you on here today, especially since we're going to be discussing a very juicy topic that we're going to get to. But before we get to it, do you want to share with people a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am Aloe Miranda Barrios. I am a native of Los Angeles, born in Mexico, been here all my life. I've started transitioning, I would say about maybe 6 years ago. And I work for a municipal government in parking. And I have 2 companion dogs. And I am age 46.
Wow, that's quite a bit of detail there. So that's good. I like that, sharing quite a bit about you. You're also, what I know you most for is that you are a marathon runner, right? So you've been Advent runner for how long now?
I've been running about 16 years now. And I've completed 28 marathons and 1 ultra.
My God.
And the ultra consisted of 52 miles and 11 hours and 59 minutes.
So you've been running for a long time, almost 2 decades now, right? And as a runner, especially as a Advent runner, what are your thoughts today? This, without getting too political, but I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts today? Because we hear so much in the news today about transgender athletes. So being a woman and being a trans woman and an athlete, what are your thoughts on that today about trans people being able to compete?
Well, I think Chris Mosier says it best, and he's a trans man on the U.S. Olympic teams, and so he advocates for this a lot. And I think it's important that everyone participates, all inclusive, nothing to do with gender. I mean, just if you want to run. If you want to participate, you should be able to participate. I mean, I know there's categories and classes, but hormones levels the playing field. So I think everyone should be able to participate.
Okay, that's very well said. How did you get into running anyway?
It started on my 30th birthday. It was just a week before, and maybe a couple of months actually. I have a colleague at work who had been running for years, and he suggested that I should do something for my 30th birthday other than party.
And you decided to run.
I decided to run. So I had about 6 months of training, and into my 30th birthday, my first marathon was LA, and I loved it ever since.
Wow. And you got kind of hooked on it.
Oh, I was hooked.
You still are. It's interesting because running requires quite a bit of discipline, right? As I understand, I had a roommate in college who was a runner, and she would be up at 5 or 4 a.m. and going on her practice runs. So it's quite a discipline. Have you noticed a parallel between running and transition? Because transition, one can say, is also quite a discipline.
Oh, of course, there's a huge parallel to it. I mean, like anything else in life, right? There are steps you take. You just don't put a pair of shoes and decide I'm going to go running. You just don't put a pair of heels and say I'm going to go dancing if you've never done it. Or for that matter, just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a woman today, just go out into the world. You're going to get, the weirdest looks. Same thing for a runner. You're not going to get very far. Without the discipline and the training, you're not going to get very far. Sorry.
So do you think that metaphor, the way you're saying it, is pretty accurate to, if we were to translate it to transition? So if you're not going to take it as a discipline, as one step at a time, and kind of build up that momentum, right? You can't just one day wake up and decide that, you're just going to go for it. It's just not going to work.
No, I mean, there might be someone who's going to pull it off. There are those who are going to be able to pull it off. And kudos to you. And there are those of us who just can't always pull it off. And it's baby steps. It's a mental building block of things that you have to put together to form a solid base. And that's the base is going to support you along the way when you start to have setbacks. Yeah.
So if transition is in a way a marathon, have you finished running in that scope of your life? No.
No.
Okay, tell me more.
I will be running the rest of my life, and my transition is the same. Every day is a new lesson, a new observation. So every morning, I just recently had my SRS, my gender confirmation surgery, and I'm learning so much more about my body. I'm 46. I'm like, I thought I knew everything, but no, everything changes constantly. And so running is the same way. There are setbacks. The more I run, the better I feel. The longer I run, some days I don't feel really good. And I'm like, oh God, this sucks. This really sucks.
So you think transition is going to be, in a way, something that you do for the rest of your life?
You do. You don't get to a point where you finish. You might achieve the level of like, I'm here, right? But once you're there, you're gonna want to change even more. There's gonna be something that's just gonna want to change. I follow Teal Swan. I think someone had said it. Are you gonna ever be happy? And the reality is no. There's always gonna be something that's gonna want, and you're always gonna want something. You're never gonna want to reach a point where you're like, I'm happy, I'm satisfied, I got everything I want. No, you've achieved that, and then there's the next level of like, what's next?
Does that bother you? That there's you don't feel that there's really ever a finish line? There's always something else.
No, I have plenty of medals to show for of my achievements, and there's always that I could do better, I could be better. It may be more, if not physical, an interpersonal development or something interpersonal development achievement, internally in your mind, because there's always a lot to work on yourself.
Yeah, and you just had your surgery, so I know you're doing well, right? Yeah, that's great. Congratulations, you're doing well.
Thank you.
It's a big surgery to have, and I know that a lot of people are scared of the surgery, although I think in today's day and age, it's not a surgery that necessarily has a lot of complications or a lot of risks. So I think it's relatively, at least statistically in terms of research, it's considered to be relatively safe surgery. What was your biggest fear going into surgery, if you had any?
I guess it's the level of uncomfortableness that one experiences. And it's just not on one level. It's not physical. It's a combination of things: mental, physical, spiritual, metaphysical. It's everything. So you reach a point where like, okay, is this gonna be good? Is this gonna be okay? Am I gonna be okay? Going back to running, I haven't run in 2 months, and I'm starting to sweat. I'm like, oh my God, I got to get out there. And it's it's not just that was my thing. It's just the anxiety of what's this going to be like. Everything else, physically, medically, has been great. I have no complaints, maybe a little bit, but no regrets.
Okay.
No regrets, but there is that feeling of just that the unknown, the uncertainty of what it's going to be like. For me, at least.
Was there anything about the process that surprised you, that maybe you were not expecting to feel a particular way or to have a particular awareness or realization?
The dilating was an issue for me. It still
dilating wasn't what?
An issue. It is an issue for me, dilating, because you have to be consistent. You have to be patient. And there's that level again of uncomfortable. You have to push a little harder. But I've gotten over that, and there's some minor setbacks, but everything is new. That's the thing. Everything is new, so you don't know what to expect. And when you come across a roadblock or a barrier or a bump in the road, you're like, what's this? But that's that's the only thing that bugs me the most.
Yeah, it's quite a learning curve. I hear that dilation it's a process that people really underestimate, because you really have to carve out segments of time in a day. You have to have space, you have to have time. And this is why statistically a lot of vaginal stenosis tends to happen, because just women, they don't think that it's going to need that as much. So yeah, it's quite a challenge. So shifting from the surgery to a juicy topic that we want to talk to the sex siren today about. Let's talk about sexuality. I think sexuality is such a huge and broad topic to discuss, especially as it relates to and pertains to transition, because a lot of times sexuality tends to be much more fluid for a lot of people than kind of set in the status quo. So let's talk to you about sexuality, because I know you're very open about this topic, which one of the things I love about you, you're very matter of fact and very candid. So it's up your alley. So share a little bit about your sexuality. Maybe if your sexuality was in any form or shape different prior to transition, and how, if at all, it has changed.
Well, prior to transition, I was presenting as a gay male. So I think so being a gay male, it allowed me to be with the gender that I was preferring, right? Men. And I've known that for, I don't know, forever. And so as I just, along the way, I started out, I was really shy at the very beginning. I was really shy. And then
shy?
Yeah.
I find it very hard to imagine.
Very shy. And in the minute that I was just exposed to the world in the sense of just sexuality, I started to just there's nothing wrong with it. And the funny thing about this is that my mom was a really good, I don't know. She wasn't my pimp, but she definitely was a person who just made it seem like there's nothing wrong with having sex. Right. And she made a point to me, like, if you're going to find a partner, fine, sleep as many as you can, not like that form, but just find the one that fits. And just enjoy each other in that sense, physical and mental.
Wow.
And
it's quite progressive mom you got there.
She was, rest in peace. But she was. I think that was like the door opener for me, that mentality of things. And it's along the way, I just learned more and more about myself. I tend to be an exhibition by nature. So
exhibitionist by nature?
Yes. Like
what
I
is
can
that?
get up and walk around naked in a public setting and not feel embarrassed. Although I might just turn colors, but if someone said, take off your shirt now, I'm like, okay, I'm taking off the shirt and not have a problem with it.
You clearly were an exhibitionist before by nature, but do you still feel the same way, the same comfort level with your body now?
Oh yes, even more. Even more.
Good for you. See, this is why I wanted to talk to Aloe today. This is why I wanted to bring you on here.
The boys would be like, girl, you thick. And I'm like, oh, I'm thick. I have no problem with that. But I was in the military. So there's a level of like discipline that I maintain. But I think that's what kind of centers me a lot of the times. So I have no problem being who I am. I love my body. I love myself. I've always said that to people. If you don't love yourself, you're always going to have some kind of struggle.
Have you always had that? I mean, you're talking about a very innate confidence, okay? And you're talking about confidence before you transitioned, when you were identifying as a gay male, right? And then post-transition. And it's tremendous amount of confidence. And usually this is something that especially women struggle with. And it's hearing you talk about being not only so exhibitionistic, but being so comfortable with your body.
You have to love yourself. I cannot reiterate that. You have to love yourself. I didn't suffer a lot from dysphoria um, as I was transitioning on before, but I did try to um, overachieve a lot of times, especially when I was presenting male. Um, if I if someone made a comment like, "Hey, you're looking kind of thick in the center," or uh, things like that. Your chin is showing, and I'm like, wait, what's the deal with that? And so I would sort of just kind of step back and then kind of fall into like, I don't feel comfortable with my body right now. And I would go in and go to the gym, and I would go spend like 12 hours a week in the gym, and I'd be like, no, okay, I would achieve maybe the goal and just drop some weight and be like, okay. Um, but every time I've changed my body, I've always embraced it. Right? That's the thing. I've always embraced the look. And if I was lazy and got back into my former self and just kind of gained more weight, I embraced it. I started to love myself. I didn't hate it. And I stopped thinking about people's opinions of me. If they said, hey, you're looking thick, you're looking too skinny, you're looking this or that, I didn't, you know what, I'm not gonna let that bother me. As I got older and matured in my mind, I started to realize that the things that are important the most to me are me, myself, my happiness. And I stopped caring about what other people thought. I mean, I don't disregard it completely, but it also gives me a sense of self, and it helps me develop my sense of self.
That's quite an important thing there. I agree with you that you have to love yourself. Totally agree. I also know that that's not easy. You know, some people grow. I mean, fortunately, your mom was so incredibly supportive and so present for you, right? At least from what, well, you're like, um, there's people who grow up where they have people surrounding them that are telling them negative things about them, how they look, you know, what they should change about their body. And when you're in that environment and you constantly hear those things, it's difficult to turn them off, and it's difficult to cultivate that confidence you're speaking of.
It is. It is. And it takes people like you and friends like you to plant those seeds, or I would say give those building blocks to people. Because, you know, I grew up, my mom at the beginning wasn't really supportive when I came out as gay male. She ed rector for a little while. It just really messed with her mind a lot. And I grew up in a family of seven and four other boys. And there was a lot of, you know, male testosterone, and there was a lot of stuff going competition. So I don't know if it was just something that was innate in me when I was growing up, that I just didn't want to be part of that. And so I developed that little by little.
Mm.
And along the way, I think it was people that came into my life and left something in me, an impression of like, you don't need this, you don't need that, you could do this, you could do that. And I started to embrace it. I have a curious mind on a lot of things, and so I've learned that. And like I said, loving yourself it's not easy. It's not easy because you're gonna find things you're always going to change,
Right.
right? So it's learning to embrace. I think learning to embrace is probably the difficult part of things, and it's not settling either. It's just learning to embrace and knowing that it can change. It can be better or it can be worse.
It's a mindset, right?
Mindset.
It's all
Definitely a
about
mindset.
mindset. Yeah. So going back to sexuality, this is, I think some people tend to be very confused on it. I don't know why, but they do. That for somebody that was sexually attracted to guys, identifying as a male at the time, post-transition, you're still sexually attracted to men.
Mhm. Yes,
And
very much.
and a lot of people find that very confusing, right? Have you found a lot of people who tend to be like very confused on this scope of discussion of sexuality?
I've had many of discussions at my dinner table with my neighbor and my roommate about these things. And one of the things that comes up a lot of times, especially with transitioning women become lesbians. That is something that they cannot grapple with.
Mm-hmm.
So a male transitions to female, and the female continues to like women, and so now they're lesbian on the spectrum, right? And their arguments always, well, why is it that they like why don't they like men? They were men before, and they were dating women, and they became women, and now they're dating women. They're lesbians. You know, hormones doesn't always not always going to change the gender you're going to want to fall in love
Right.
with, like, or attract. It doesn't really change anything. For some of us, it does enhance. But it's an interesting subject, and I just think about it. It's just women liking other women. That's what they like. It's nothing to do with transitioning, or it's just women liking other women. That's really, and for me, it's the same thing. I was a gay male liking men, um, and you know, because I was a gay male, at some point I decided that that's where I wanted to be, because that's what got me closer to that attraction to those men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't have to hide a lot of times. And as I transitioned and became who I am, they were like, "Oh, it's obvious you love men." I'm like, that's not the point. But yes, I mean, I'm fortunate. Yeah.
And it's also would be fair to point out, now I know we're using a lot of binary language, and I think primarily because you identify as what I would tend to
Straight
call
female.
trans-binary.
Mm.
You're somebody who strongly identifies with the feminine, with the woman side of things. So I think it would be fair to say that your sexuality, while still being very much attracted to men, it shifted. You're no longer obviously attracted to gay men, because those men are not attracted toward women, but you are attracted to straight men. Has that altered, has that changed the playing field of sexuality? And have you noticed differences in dating and just all of those intimacy things?
Yes.
That was a very oh girl.
You know,
Ooh, spill some tea.
well, let's start with just dating in LA. Let's
Mhm.
just talk about dating in LA. It's insane. Whether you're gay or straight, male or female, it's insane. Non-binary, it's insane,
True.
right? Compound that when I was presenting male, uh, that was even more difficult. It was a competition. It was a meat market, but you had to be ready to enter that meat market. You had to be fit. You had to be a certain look. You had to have a certain demeanor. It was difficult, and I was thought, do women go through this? And I would ask my sister, "What's it like dating?" She's like, "Oh, it's horrendous.
Yes.
The guys are flakes and losers." And I'm like, "Wait, that's the same thing in the gay world. The guys are flakes and losers, and all they want is a piece of ass, you know." And so now I'm on this other side of the view, and because I bring something special to the to the market, I am a little more popular. My stand is never empty. Yeah.
I'm so
but
happy to hear.
but there's the other element of just wanting to date, and
Yeah.
I'm in that, and now I can relate with my sisters and be like, oh my god, these guys are flakes, they're losers. And I think about, wait, but that's what it was like in the gay world, but that's also Los Angeles. It's very hard. It's not easy, but um I'm definitely learning a lot more about myself as I present, female, and identify as a straight woman.
What kind of things?
Well, there's etiquette. There's etiquette, and then there's just the idea that because I transitioned, it didn't make things better. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same game, a different field,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The same game, a different field. Having to weed through these people, the freaks, the
Yeah.
losers, all those things. And then you think you find the right guy, you find someone who's worthy of the dating, and you come across and you're like, no. And you're like, fuck, does this shit change? Does it really change? Does it
Mm.
get better? But
Were you
I mean,
hoping it would be better? Were you?
no,
No.
no. Well, it's definitely, like I said, now there's more, because I don't date gay men. That's for sure. They don't date gay men. Don't date trans women. Let's just put it that way. Because everyone tells me you could just, they're gay. You could just. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. it's never going to happen. But my dating pool has changed, and because of who I am and a trans woman, it's actually that pool is pretty wide. Um, but it's more just one night stands and curiosity, and then there's chasers and everything else. Um, but it didn't change a lot. You still have to weed through all the stuff.
Yeah, you still have to go through the same, I call it discernment, right? To
Right.
without people who are not interested or people who just want to have one night stand versus people who actually, meet some kind of your personal criteria for what you're looking for in a relationship, all this stuff. And sounds like there was quite a bit of sexual objectification in a gay dating pool world, and you're experiencing the same thing now, which, of course, welcome to the female club. Welcome to our world, totally get it. It is challenging, I agree, and LA has its own, can of worms, has its own challenges. What are your thoughts on disclosure, self-disclosing trans identity in dating?
I am very open about who I am, um, just because it's not so much a level of comfort, it's also a level of safety and concern. Um, I read in the news all the time. Was it? I think I don't want to get too political, but there's like 12 states that are not part of. I think it's wait. There are 12 states who don't support the law of like if you're trans and you didn't identify, you could basically get murdered or something like that. There's a
Yeah.
law that yeah, or it was mostly written for gay at some point, but then it became where it's like if you didn't identify, you hook up with this guy, you go in your hotel and you didn't say who you were, what you were, all of a sudden you're murdered, and the guy gets off the hook by saying, well, she didn't say, or they didn't say that they were trans or gay or whatever the case is, and they feel like they were conned or duped, and they're off the hook.
Yeah.
I don't want to put myself in that position. Um,
So it's a safety decision.
it's a safety decision for me, and just being transparent. Depending on the person I'm going to date or see or hang out with, I want to feel comfortable in who I am. There are a lot of things I need to work on myself, especially my voice, but I've learned to embrace my voice over the years as well. And I get the brow raising when I open my mouth, and I just want be straight out and clear. This is who I am, and this is what I am, and no sugarcoating it, nothing. It's just like it is what it is. But a lot of times, like I said, it is mostly safety, and I am proud of who I am. I'm not going to hide that.
Yeah.
I've come across women, other trans women, who once they meet that bar, that privilege of identifying as cisgender females, they'll do so, and they just get lost in the pack. And that's her choice. I
Mhm.
like my uniqueness.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a level of also acceptance and being able to, if you felt or somebody else watching it may have felt an element of shame or guilt about their trans identity, when you bypass that, right? When you work on yourself and you don't have that, I agree, it just becomes something that, this is who I am. And sometimes I think it's probably in a long term better, because that way it's also discernment, right? You kind of
Mhm.
weaving out people who are not not interested in dating trans people. In terms of that, in terms of dating, we know that in the trans world, there's a lot of kind of a very, I call my epic view. Any guy who's attracted to trans women is suddenly a chaser, or he's fetishizing them, or he has a kink for trans women, which is, I really personally, I hate this myopic view, because I met a lot of men who they're genuinely attracted to trans females, period. Just the way that, somebody might be attracted to cis men or non-binary people. So what are your thoughts on that view? Do you think that suddenly every man who's attracted to you is falls into this automatically category?
No, no. You know, I embrace my sexuality profoundly. Uh, I enjoy having sex with men. I have a, to me, it's not a shame or taboo. Um, and I've come across the chasers. I mean, to me, it's not. Yes, there are. It's a very few that I know that I've come across. Um, but I'm not opposed to it at times. It's just having, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get off as well. This is just not one-sided. Not for
Uh-huh.
me, at least not for me. To me, I'm gonna get off. Right? There's some validations involved. There's just the element of fun and thrill. At least for me, it is. So I don't uh, look at them in a negative way. Not all the time. There's just sometimes the weirdos and the creeps, but for the most part, um, I don't really think it's a negative thing. If you like feet, that's a fetish. If you like smelling hair, that's a fetish, right? If you're into those things, whether you're across any gender, they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
there. It's there. You know, guys who
Right.
go after girls with big boobs, whether you're cis or trans or whatever the case is, they're there. Not just, it's not just inclusive to just trans women. I mean, it's not. They're everywhere. You have to learn to deal with it or just not deal with it at all, period.
Have you learned a way to be able to discern when you're talking to somebody that is perhaps, I hate that word chaser, but when we think about individuals, men or women or any other genders, who particularly are attracted to trans bodies, let's say it that way, who are particularly attracted to trans bodies for sexual preference only, period. So they're not interested in dating, they're not interested in relationships, they're not interested in relational intimacy. It's primarily just sexual attraction. This how have you found a way to be able to discern between a person that falls into that category that just wants to have sex and a person what that you have a 5
Yeah.
question test you can
I
ask?
I mean I you mean questions that I can ask or what?
No, I'm just kidding, but how you clearly you're able to tell the
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
If I'm gonna get off, if I want to get off, I'm gonna get off. I mean, I too have like a preference when it comes to men, you know. I look at sometimes it's just a vibe and connection. You may want something else or you want one specific thing. Um, and I'm very sexual. Like I said, I enjoy my body. I love my body. I've never had an issue with it before or after surgery. Um, but I just, to me, is I want to get off. I like the thrill of it too sometimes.
Right. What I meant is I get that. And I get that you're totally comfortable being sexually intimate with a person that just wants to have you for sex. And,
Mhm.
because the way you see it is, hey, I'm getting something out of it too. And I'm not diluting myself. I know they're not in it for a relationship, and that's fine. I'm keeping my expectations reasonable to, we're getting physical, we're giving each other pleasure, and we're saying goodbye in the end of the night. What I was wondering is when you come across individuals, in your case, it would be men, who fall into the categories that we call chaser, fetishizer, kink. Are you able to discern if that person is in it just for that, or if it's actually somebody who may want something more?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You can tell. You can tell. There is a connection. You make that. There's a vibe that they give off. You can tell right away. Um, I've come across those. So I do just this is just going to be fun and that's it. Nothing else to it. I have been surprised though with the ones who are chasers and be like want a certain thing, and they turn out to be uh, interesting people. You know, there's something that they have that you're like, wow, I didn't expect this from this person. It started as a fantasy or it started as a chase, and then you look at them as a whole and you're like, wow, didn't expect this. There's maybe they're kinder or maybe there's something about them that you just didn't really look at the beginning, and then when they're gone you're just like, wow, that was amazing or that was interesting. Sometimes it could be even gross, but uh, it's yeah, you can, I get, at least I get a good vibe about people. I can kind of read them. um, I try not to get too crazy or involved with that because uh, it it robs from the experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? It creates a different level of experience, and I don't want to even think about that.
Mm, yeah. You also said that dating in LA is very challenging, and being somebody who is who loves to date, loves to be sexually active, loves all of the things that I put in the very healthy human category to be able to enjoy this life. It must be challenging to, when you're especially looking for relationships, when you're looking long-term relationships, right? It must be quite disappointing to go on a date, have things not work out, or have things not fall through. How do you find in yourself the positive attitude to just, get up and put yourself out there again?
It's very difficult. But it's like, for me, oh gosh, I tried not to experience in the heartbreak, not to live in it, not to dwell too much in it. Because if I did, then I would never date.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've had good dates and I've had bad dates. But I always only take away the positive from those experiences and try not to dwell on it, because it's like everything else. You're just gonna feel that down every time, and you're gonna have a struggle, and is it always gonna be like this? Am I gonna find the right one? Is this shoe gonna fit?
Yeah.
So I just don't dwell on that. And I've had my heart broken several times. And my mom was a huge advocate about that. It was like, go out there and get it broken every time and put it back together, and the next guy, and put it back together, and the next guy, over until you find the right one. And I always think about like this thing of like a porcelain cup. You can keep putting it back together, but there's going to be little shards that just don't, you've lost along the way. Right. And so I've learned to I'm going to make my own porcelain and just fill in those gaps,
Oh, I love that.
and just recreate it and do it all over again. And this is coming from me again now. And it's just more like, okay, I need to fix this. I need to make this better. How do I do this? And I just make my own porcelain. I just fill in the gaps again, and it's solid. I mean, that's work that I've done for myself, and not allow the world to be like, just keep beating me down every time. And this is just not just dating, this is in my transition. I had a story that when I first came out and I transitioned at work, and I was the first transition person at work, transitioning. And the very first day I went out to assist one of my college employees, I got beat down by a customer. I mean, thoroughly. I walked away from the experience like, shit, man, is this gonna be the first? Well, that like this was the first, but it's not gonna be the last. I took a moment. I wept in the corner of a parking lot for like a good minute or two. I got up and I shook it off. I thought, hey, bring it on. This is not gonna be the last time this is gonna happen to me. And it's the same thing with dating. I mean, it's not gonna be the last time someone's gonna let me down and break my heart. And I'm like, okay, wait, put it back together, fill in the gaps, build it better, build it stronger, and go out there and just keep doing it again and again and again. And in doing so, it's allowed me to have a different view of the world, and my experiences that I've learned from them have made me, I think, a more better, richer, well-rounded person.
Do you think that has more to do with you confronting those parts of yourself that want to give up, that just want to throw in the towel, and constantly pushing yourself out there, and every time it's still painful, but it gets a little bit more okay to be able to get up and get going?
Going back to the running analogy and the parallels that it has, I've gotten older and my running has gotten harder. And I wanted to give up and just throw in the towel. But then I come across people that say, hey, there's a fix, there's a new exercise, there's a new technique, this is going to help. And all of a sudden, I've gotten this level of like, oh my God, I'm being free. I've reached a different level. I've got a new PR. And I'm older and it's harder, but that's okay. I feel great. So there are those milestones, even in my life, where in transition and dating, where it's the same thing. Yes, it gets harder. There was a poem I had read, or a quote that I read somewhere years ago in my 20s, where I don't know it word for word, but it said at some point your light goes out your fire goes out, right? And there's going to be individuals who are going to come into your life and light that fire that you get. We should be happy for those people, you know. Um, and I've had so many of those people in my life, and that's what's made it much more easier for me to be able to accept who I am, because there's always going to be love in my life. There's always going to be someone's going to be holding me up. There's always going to be pulling it together for me as well. And I think that's where I've taken a lot of my stuff from. My energy, my confidence, everything that's come from that. So I don't just weather the storm alone. Sometimes I weather it with, with good people in my life, and I think that's been my support, and that's what got me through.
Mm.
Coaches and running, exercises, same thing in love life, the same thing. Someone's gonna come along and say, "Hey, it's gonna get better. It's gonna be okay." Oh, this shit sucks. Fuck it. Let's just go have a good night somewhere, just good time, and that's it. And we'll deal with the regret later, and everything else goes away.
Yeah, so not having to do it all alone, building the community around you of friends and people that love you and care about you before you can build that intimate relationship, because if things don't fall through, they're like that net that can catch you when you fall, right?
Yeah.
And that's essential. Would you say that that's
very essential? You have to have, you have to have a building block. You have to have a solid foundation. You have to have a solid foundation. You just can't. It seems to my friends that I've done this alone, even my family, because I've distanced myself from them a lot of times. And but I've taken things from them, and I said I use those building blocks and made those foundations on the experiences they've given me, and I made it whole. But I'm never alone. I have a great community. I have a great support of friends. Um, Someone recently asked me, "How many friends do you have?" And I said one, just one solid friend. But that equals a lot of people. It's not just one person. It's a lot of people. I have one solid community, one solid support. And
I
someone
love
coming
that. So you think your whole community is one person?
yes. What's that? It takes a village.
Yeah, it does take a village.
It does take a village. And I laughed at that at the very beginning when I first heard that metaphor, that phrase, and I laughed about that. I'm like, does it really take a village? I mean, I thought it was hilarious. And I realized it takes a fucking village, sometimes a huge one, to hold you up.
Yeah,
It
I
does.
agree. I agree. I'm realizing, me, I'm very introverted and very solitary. And to me, my person one is a small group. But I'm realizing that as I get older too, that it's so essential. It's so essential to have those people. It's like, otherwise your table with one leg to stand on.
Yeah, that's not easy.
No, that's not with earthquakes happening in LA. So your dating is going to shift a little bit, isn't it? Especially since you had surgery. Your body has changed, your relationship to your body is going to change, your sexuality, how you feel is all going to change too. What are your maybe, well, sexuality in a sense of what feels good now, what feels pleasurable now, in that sense. Um, is there anything you're looking forward to in terms of your now exploration of your body, exploration of your intimacy and relationship to your body?
Not really. You know what? I thought it was going to be a game changer at the beginning, right? So I thought it was going to be this huge thing. I was like, oh my God, it's going to be a game changer.
How so?
Because I just thought that there were going to be guys that would be like, oh, I want you, like, how was it? Unaltered. And then there were the guys who, I don't mind you for altered. My altered, and it's a very horrible way of putting it, right? Because we're not girls, but it's that way. So you're post-op or pre-op, and the guys who want pre-op and the guys who want post-op.
Yeah.
And and I was not in a relationship. I'm not in a relationship before. I wasn't in a relationship before, or not before transition. I'm sorry, before surgery. But it reminds me of a situation where when I was dating a gay, when I was presenting male and I was dating a gay guy. When I came out to him and said, "Hey, I'm gonna do this," then he just over time just changed and started to drift. And then he said, I can't do this, you know. And so it reminded me of the same thing when I started to think about the surgery and talking to my other friends and acquaintances about this transition with that surgery. And I thought, is my dating pool going to get smaller now? Is it going to get, is it, you know, if half the men I was dating were into pre-op women, and now I got to deal with the post-op. And then there's a deal of like the men who are, of course, cisgender who like women, and that may include post-op women, how comfortable they feel with dating, and if you identify as transgender, right? Because there's that whole stigma of if you date a transgender woman, you're gay. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So when I thought about that, my pool may have gotten smaller, and I have not experienced it just yet. I'm exploring, I'm learning myself even more. And I mean, I'm out there still talking to men. And I realized like it's not that small. It's not actually, it hasn't changed. It's actually my net is now wider. So I can cast my net and it's like, oh my God, there's a huge field of people, guys who are interested in women like me. Um, and it's quite surprisingly in this city that
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually coming across, at least I've come across a few men who are not ashamed of dating post-op women.
Yeah.
Like have no stigma to that idea. You know, I mean, there are a few that I've come across, but not the ones that I've been hanging out with and just talking to in general. Have no qualms about that, and I think that's what made it much more easier, at least reassuring to myself that hey, I'm gonna be okay. This is
Yeah.
not that bad, you know.
Yeah, I think for all the challenges LA presents with dating pool, at the same time, I agree. I think it's very beneficial to if you are transitioning and you are interested in a relationship, I think it can benefit you tremendously to do it in a big city because there's much more people who are open-minded to it. My heart really goes to people who are like in the very small Midwest areas. Now I just interviewed Ashley, and she transitioned. Part of her transition was in Berlin, and she was talking about how it's sexually just crazy liberating city, and she had a lot of amazing positive sexual experiences. So I'm thinking about LA starting to be, always has been very sexual liberating, but it's even becoming more so. So I agree, it's the pool is wider, even though it's that much more challenging because the competition is that much bigger too.
Right, right. And it's always interesting because I will ask the guys that come across and I'm like, wow, you're really beautiful, you're stunning, you're this, you're that. And there's that curiosity in me, and I ask, why me? Like, why, if not me, but why a trans woman? You know, why would you want to date a trans woman if we're post-op and we're just like any other, now we just become a dime in the, you know, a dime a dozen. And he was like, no, there's a uniqueness to you girls. There's something about it. And, you know, I'm not going to describe the femininity about it, but I'm like, wait, my boss is really feminine and she's cisgender. I don't get it, but it almost seems like women in general give up that femininity. I don't, or is it that they're feminist and just like fuck bras and, you know, fuck makeup, that kind of thing. And I'm like, wait, you know, like, you know, I mean, yeah, I'm blessed and fortunate that I look the way I look, but I'm like, no, you know, but it's always surprising to me when I hear that you're very feminine. I'm like, me?
You are. For those who are obviously people, a lot of people watching, they don't know you, but um, I think the first time I met you, it was at that free support group I was hosting, and there walks in Aloe, probably 5 or 6 inch stiletto heels, a very body-fitted contour dress, clinging to every single curve of her body. I think you wore red lipstick. I mean, this was like you walked in with so much pizzazz and confidence. And I think, you know, here's the thing about confidence. I think a lot of people really, really underestimate confidence. And especially a lot of trans women in transition really do not, they tend to so hyper focus on everything else, right? Hair, makeup, clothing, voice. But if you don't have confidence, and if you go out there and you're kind of hunched down and you're not really, you're not carrying yourself, you're giving out that energetic vibe, right? And no matter how you may, even if you achieved level of possibility, for those again who care about that thing, even if you achieved it and you look gorgeous, if you're standing there tugging on your dress, right, and looking around and looking very insecure, people are going to sense it, and that's not attractive. Versus somebody who you for me personally, you're like blast into the room like a grenade, there's a place down, and then people are left with them. That's how, at least my energetically, how I envision you. You have shitload of confidence. And I think when you talk about this man who come up to you and you wonder why me, I think they're picking up not only on that confidence, I think they're picking up also on, everything we go through in life translates into energetic carriers in us, right? People who have overcome incredible challenges and been through a lot, who have a lot of growth, they carry themselves a particular way. And that caring is attractive. We want to be around that energy, right? That energy feels good, right? Like people who have achieved some level of enlightenment or self-growth where they're not assholes, you can feel that energy. You want to be around it. And there's a reason why you don't want to be around some people who feel like they're schmucks. So they feel like they're trying to take advantage of you. Or sadly, sometimes people have been through a lot of traumas and you can see that they're struggling still with the trauma. They have kind of a very defeating, depressive, very pulling down energy. So I think when men see you, I think that's what they see in you and everything you've been through, and that energetically translates. And I think that's what they find very attractive, because I don't care if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're trans, if you're non-binary, if you're whatever, that's something that is very, very attractive regardless of who you are.
And you're right. Yes.
I love it. And you're right. Yes.
It's funny because you're highlighting everything that is important. Body cues, body language, all those things are important. I've always, when my friends walk in, they're like this, and then I'm like, why you cross your arms? And I just point it out. It's like, why are your arms crossed? Are you okay? Are you uncomfortable? Like, I'm cold. Then hold yourself a different way.
Yeah.
Find a wrap. It's just those body language things that they give off. So when I walk into a room, I was, if I'm gonna walk in looking like crap, then I'm gonna get crap. I embrace myself. I love myself and I embrace my looks and my body. So it just makes it much more easier just to be able to do that. I'm not trying to draw too much attention, just a little bit. I'm not trying to draw all the attention, in the room.
Why not? Why not?
I think it's just more I think it's more of equity. Like everyone should have a good time. I work a room. When I work a room, I go around the entire room. I go to every corner and I talk to everybody. And I've noticed that, at least this is my thing, and that's what I've done, is I like to do that from time to time. And it's like it exposes it just opens everybody up. It's like a bottle of wine. You open it up and you gotta let it breathe. And the more it breathes, it just starts to become more alive, and it has more flavor, right? And then you savor the wine, and then you want to pass it around like, hey, look at this wine. It's so tasty, right? So it's sort of kind of the same way. So I go around and I'm like, hey, hi, how are you? And then eventually their groups just started doing the same thing, just starting to mix. I have a really, I like being a social butterfly, but at the same time, I go around and the same thing in it. But yes, I do bring, Aloe to the table every time, and it's like confident, good looking, sexy. Even if if I'm in uniform at work, it's the same thing. I will work out my hair a little before I go in there, and I just like, okay, smile, and that's, I don't know. I want to be able to diffuse the tension in the room. so that I'm
Well,
comfortable.
it also changes how you feel about yourself. I mean, that translates into emotions and into feelings. You know how they say fake it till you make it? It's kind of, it doesn't apply to everything, right? You can't fake to be, you know, I don't know, a good attorney until you make it. But you can definitely fake with certain feelings, with certain at least, you know, mindsets until you start really feelings of things. And that's definitely works, sure.
Right, and you said a lot of stuff comes from within. A lot of stuff does come from within. Um, you know, I I always think that it's funny because I always have this feeling that I walk into a room and I'm Quasimodo, and I'm like, I don't look that
Did you
bad.
say Quasimodo?
Yes, sometimes I'm walking, I'm like, I've got like Quasimodo coming
How do
into
you
me.
get Quasimodo?
I don't, it's just this thing is like, it's, it's gotta be part of my dysphoria, a little bit of that, I
Yeah.
feel like it's like this thing. And then I realize I'll come across an image and I'm like, hey, in the mirror, and I'm like, oh my God, hey. I'm like, and all of a sudden, and it's like, okay, no, it's not. I don't have that. It's not me. I just get over it quickly. But I think that's part of like just also just my transition and a little bit of my dysphoria that um, I catch myself. And I'm like, no. I'm amazing. I'm beautiful. I'm great. You know, and I start to kind of just orate that wherever
You
I go.
are. You definitely are. So, what's now for you? So, you are, like you said, transition never reaches completion. It's always a process. There's always things you learn about yourself, things you want to improve about yourself, even if they don't have to do with achieving congruency with the body. There's just all kinds of different improvements, right? You had surgery, big surgery. You're doing incredibly well. So, what's now? What are you looking forward to? What's the next 3 years trajectory for you that you can envision or that you're hoping for to cultivate?
There's more balance in my life. This whole thing, this pandemic has created this weird feeling. Um, I wouldn't say weird, but just more like, is this it? Is this all there is to it? Um, that's my age, you know. Um,
Mm,
20s were partying, and then when I got into my 30s, I started to settle a little more. Um, there was a house purchase involved, and my friends who were more older were, once you hit 30s, you're gonna make big purchases and this and that. In your 40s, you're gonna kind of just chill for a little bit, and then you get to 50s, and you're back in your 40s, or you're maybe in your 30s and your 50s. And I'm looking forward to that. That's the part I'm looking forward to. Also, I have not really, I mean, this whole level of explore my body, it's just, I'm back at square one again with the surgery. So
mm.
um, I don't know what it's gonna be like in the next few years as far as what I'm gonna experience in my body. There's a whole aging factor. There's a whole being, born in the male form that you get to deal with as well as you age. And I'm not looking forward to those things either, but um, it's, there's going to be a lot of embracing in the next few years for me, physically, mentally, emotionally. I'm not in a relationship right now, but I'm looking forward to one at least. I'm open to it. So I don't, it's just going to be, I'm 46. I'm, I'm 4 years from 50.
So,
And
I mean, come on, you girl. I mean, come on. Uh, you making us girls in their 40s sound like like I'm 86, 46. That's a great golden age.
it is. And I'm so looking forward to 50. I'm so looking forward to 50. That's the one thing. I mean, one of them is because financial stability. I've
Mhm.
worked so hard and I've done so many moves, and that's gonna be in my 50s. Um, so I'm hoping to retire at the end of the year, part-time, partial retirement. Um,
Quite
and
achievement in of itself.
yeah, it is. Thank you. And it has been. It's been very challenging. So I'm looking forward to those things. And just see what's happening, and you know, um, yeah. I'm excited for myself and my body and my mind. My heart especially. So
I'm so excited for you. I love having you on this. I love talking to you about sex and about transition and about the challenges of the dating in LA and in, other people are having challenges in other parts of the world. Thank you so very much. Always love you. Always love having you.
same
Thank you
here.
so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.